What's going on, ladies and gents, boys and girls, guardians of all ages? Joker back again, once again, and today we're talking about Destiny 2 Shadowkeep's story. I think it's been long enough, and if you don't want to be spoiled for whatever reason, leave now, or forever hold your peace. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Are they gone? Cool. Swing. Moving forward. So, there's not really much to spoil here. Yeah, I know, that's kind of disappointing. Really disappointing. Destiny 2 Shadowkeep isn't really all that original in its story, in its presentation, it's actually just kind of bog standard and formulaic. We start the mission and we fly into a location, like every other DLC ever. We think that the story's gonna be about one thing, and then suddenly, before the end of the first mission, there's a revelation. You know, like every other DLC ever since Taken King. It's like, gasp, shock, the Taken King has arrived in the system. Gasp, shock, horror, he's taken the Cabal, he's taken the Fallen, he's taken everything, he's taken Phobos. Okay, and then in Rise of Iron, it was like, gasp, shock, the House of Devils have found Siva. And then in Destiny 2, it was like, gasp, shock, Gull has taken the light. And then in Curse of Osiris, it was like, gasp, shock, Osiris needs our help. And then with fucking Warmind, it was like, gasp, shock, there's a worm god on Mars. And then with Forsaken, it was like, oh, hey, gasp, shock, Cade is dead. And now with Shadowkeep, you go through your first mission, you turn a corner, and you're like, oh, gasp, shock, there's a pyramid ship on the moon. Look, I'm not saying, I'm just saying, this is the exact same fucking narrative setup that they've used for almost half a decade. And I get it, right? If it's not broke, don't fix it. But Destiny's story is clearly fucking broken, guys. Ladies and gents, boys and girls, guardians of all ages, can we get an F in the chat for Destiny's story? And, you know, usually I have the caveat that's like, well, you know, at least the Grimoire. But for the last year, the Grimoire has been shit too, so I got nothing. I literally have nothing. Like, it's been bad, man. It's been dark times, but to be fair, the Destiny 2 Shadowkeep Grimoire is much better than anything we have seen come out of Destiny in years. But as always, I digress. So, let's get back to the story. Let's get back to the mission structure. So, of course, Bungie is utilizing this mission and story structure that they have been utilizing for the better part of half a decade. And while there's nothing wrong with this narrative setup per se, when you consider even Curse of Osiris and Warmind, Shadowkeep is quite possibly the weakest iteration of this narrative call to action in the history of the franchise. It's most definitely weaker than Taken King, Rise of Iron, Destiny 2, and Destiny 2 Forsaken. That likely has a lot to do with the first mission being weak in comparison to those other stories' first missions. The introductory missions to those other stories were, what would be the right word? More curated? Scripted? What do I mean? Well, for example, Destiny 2 and Destiny 2 Forsaken's opening missions were really well done. And while I'm sure somebody is screeching away in the comments section, "But Joker, you have a video that's entirely dedicated to everything wrong with the first mission of Destiny 2. What do you mean it was well done? You hypocrite, you changed your mind." No. There was a lot wrong with that mission from a narrative standpoint, but the gameplay, the ambience, it was all really cool. Plus, that was a video done in the vein of movie sins, and you're kinda supposed to exaggerate. That's the point. But moving forward, in Destiny 2, you arrive at a city under siege by the Cabal. You really feel the atmosphere of this attack as you make your way through the tower, and it does pay respect to just how easy this mission should be, given that at this time, we've killed gods. So, you make your way through the tower, you board Gull's ship, everything seems to be going according to plan, but what do they say about plans? Something about the best laid plans of men and rats and kings or something like that. Anyways, point being, Gull activates his trap card and strips us of our light, thus starting the campaign of Destiny 2. Forsaken, as I've said before, is a love letter to Cade 6 and a send-off for him, but It's more than just that. Cade dies during a prison break, setting up the tone for the Wild West adventure we're about to embark on. And while I've made it no secret that I find that these stories fail in a lot of ways to live up to the premise outlined by their opening missions, as in Destiny 2, losing your light is a mild inconvenience for a mission or two, and in Forsaken, disobeying the Vanguard and going rogue has absolutely no consequences. Hell, at least in Halo 5, as bad as that story was, they at least tried to act like there were consequences for Blue Team going rogue.
You're okay with this? Not just another target, you know.
Every target is just another target, Buck.
Yeah. For you, maybe. I love being an ODST. Just point and shoot. None of this gray area BS. I mean, how are we even supposed to bring them in? Ask politely?
No.
The hell?
Armor restraint.
These first call to action missions in both Destiny 2 and Forsaken do a fantastic job of setting up these stories. It's ultimately the stories, however, that don't live up to these introductory missions, not the other way around. In Shadowkeep, Bungie is going for and failing to present a huge battle. Anyone who watched my first impressions video will remember that I compared the Siege to the Moon and the Scarlet Keep to one of Bungie's previous works, Halo Reach, and how Bungie with Halo Reach was able to really pull off that sense of being part of an epic battle. In Destiny 2 Shadowkeep, the first mission isn't really that great. We saw snippets of it prior to release, and I thought it might actually be cool because I really like the idea of sieging the moon, and it does have some cool moments. For example, anytime that Bungie uses the public space matchmaking for a mission, you've already won points with me. You know how people say remember the Alamo, or how Halo fans say remember Reach? Well, this was our remember Mara Ebrium moment, only on a budget. And it's sad because if you go back to that Reach reference, almost a decade ago, Bungie was able to pull off making us feel like we're part of a larger conflict. Here, words fail me to describe how absolutely pathetic this is. I mean, think about it. We're sieging the moon. The Hive have constructed a Scarlet Keep, a castle. The Hive have a fuck-mothering castle. It looks like it's straight out of Lord of the fucking Rings. And what do we get? We get like 5 Guardians, a couple of tanks, and some frames. Whoop-de-fucking-do. Come on, Bungie. You can do so much better than this. And this should be kind of infuriating to anybody who's played Shadowkeep or knows the deeper lore. I know I'm sort of all over the place, but to go back to that Mara Ebrium reference from earlier, Mara Ebrium is also known as the Great Disaster. That's where thousands of Guardians took to the moon ill-prepared and got their asses kicked. Here, yeah, the Hive have lost a couple of gods since then, but we know that the Hive number in the tens of thousands of millions. So the opening mission isn't just kind of disappointing in scope and scale, but it plays out less like an opening mission to a grand adventure, and more like a poorly thought out strike. I mean, at the beginning of the mission, Zavala even tells us, "Don't be scared about being on the moon." Oh.
The Hive pour onto the surface of our moon from the keep. That is where our disturbance originated. We will investigate, but first we must regain a lunar foothold. For some of you, this is all too familiar. But do not let the atrocities of Crota haunt you. Whatever this is, we will not let the tragedies of our past repeat themselves.
And yet, this mission fails to live up to its own hype. Now, granted, it sounds like I'm being overly critical of this mission, but it's not without promise. I mean, what's the Scarlet Keep? What's with these red palette swapped Hive? What Hive god will we be killing this week? Of course, ladies and gents, boys and girls, guardians of all ages, none of that actually matters. The Scarlet Keep doesn't matter, the red palette swapped Hive don't matter, what Hive god we're killing this week does not matter, because the second you turn this corner and you're staring down an ancient darkness pyramid ship, not unlike the ones that we saw at the end of Destiny 2, the Hive, the Scarlet Keep, anything else that this opening mission was setting up, hell, anything that Destiny has been setting up until this point, really gets thrown out the fucking window. I mean, in this DLC, the Hive are really treated as nothing more than a footnote or an afterthought. And hey, maybe that would be okay if we got like new cool darkness enemies, but we don't. We get palette swap, Destiny 1 and Destiny 2 bad guys that we've already killed. On top of that, it's not like there wasn't a story to tell with the Hive either. Just on the face of it, you have the Scarlet Keep, you have the Daughters of Crota. You have a plot that is only revealed in lore outside the game in the Collector's Edition, where the Hive are trying to resurrect Oryx. Fucking resurrect Oryx. That's a footnote in lore outside of the fucking game. How the absolute fuck do you fuck that up? Fuck. How do you fuck that up? Jesus, fuck. Not to mention you still have Savathûn, Xiva Arath, and Dul Incaru. The Hive are far from spent when it comes to narrative. But the second we see the pyramid on Luna, none of that matters. And that's not just my interpretation of it, that's what the campaign is. The second we see that ship, it's no longer about the Hive. It's about crafting a set of armor by fighting these nightmares that were created by this pyramid ship so that we could then go onto the pyramid ship and see what's going on. You could have replaced the Hive with the Cabal, with the Fallen, with the Vex, and short of using the Hive to resell us the moon, the story would still be the same story, because ultimately the story doesn't put us in a position where we absolutely need the Hive. Sure, there's the Lectern of Enchantment, but that's nothing more than a MacGuffin. You could literally replace the Lectern of Enchantment with something from the Fallen, something from the Vex, something from the Cabal, and it would do the exact same thing narratively. Meaning what little involvement the Hive have on the story is negligible at best. I mean, think about it. The story is about the Vex invading ultimately because the pyramid on the moon. So why don't we use a Vex thing to get to the pyramid? Or, better yet, Callus. The guy's been doomsday prepping for the darkness for eons. We could just go to Callus and get something. He owes us and he likes us and we're his BFF for life, his shadow, his chosen one. Not only would that narratively tie this season to Season of Opulence, but if the broken, ruined remnants of the Hive have magic that can get onto the pyramid ship, so does Callus. Point being, the Hive serve absolutely no purpose in this DLC other than an excuse to resell us the moon. But moving forward, if the campaign takes 3, maybe, if I'm being super duper generous, 4 hours to finish, and if I continue being super generous, even with the Hive plot being an afterthought, there's maybe only half an hour of actual story content here. If I was being realistic, however, you can sum up the entire plot of Shadowkeep in 2.5 minutes. Don't believe me? Here's plot point 1!
The source of our disturbance should be right around here. What is that? I've never seen anything like it. This must be what Eris was after.
And here's plot point 2.
One by one, Crota slaughtered many guardians. The light stood by and did nothing. And a great disaster ensued. In light, there is only death. Come to us. Do not be afraid. Respite lies ahead.
Heard your cries for help, and soon we will answer. Who are you? Don't you recognize us? We are not your friend. We are not your enemy. We are your salvation.
Yeah, you really don't miss much between finding the pyramid ship and getting on it and communing with it. Hell, you could have just kept going on the first level and actually just boarded the pyramid ship then, and you would have missed nothing. This does, of course, lead into Season of the Undying, but Shadowkeep and Season of the Undying are not the same thing. And realistically, the plot of Season of the Undying has been, you know that pyramid ship on the moon? Yeah, it's been communicating with the Black Garden and the Vex are pissed off. Go find out what that's about. All of this, of course, is just nothing more than a loose narrative to give us a reason to go and shoot shit. And hey, you know what? If that's enough for you, more power to you. Me, personally, I tend to like a little more plot with my plot and story with my story. All of that said, even with this 15 to 16 minute diatribe so far, we still haven't gotten to the biggest failing of Shadowkeep's story. It's how Shadowkeep tries to recreate Forsaken's endgame in the first mission. So for those of you who don't know, because you may be new to the franchise, in Forsaken, we go with Cayde to the Prison of Elders. We're there to help Cayde and Petra put down a prison riot. Turns out, the riot is actually a jailbreak and Cayde gets killed by Uldren. Since the Reef is its own sovereign territory, the city has its hands tied. A lot of people like to give Zavala shit for not taking the Reef by force and hunting down and killing Uldren for the murder of Cayde. But it wasn't a murder, it was an execution. Hear me out on this. Uldren was the crown prince of the Awoken, so Cayde's participation in capturing and imprisoning him while keeping Petra in power was a conspiracy to usurp the Prince of the Awoken. It's actually kind of interesting because at the beginning of Forsaken, a lot of Awoken are still on Uldren's side. You know, until he kills them because he's crazy. It's something that I wish the story would have explored more, but the way that it chooses to makes Zavala look like a coward for not wanting to invade the Reef, when really, the city's hands were tied. Hence why we have to go rogue, and I really wish there were more consequences for that as well. This starts our Wild West story for revenge. And in the end, it's revealed that Uldren was being controlled by Riven and by proxy Savathûn. And while this doesn't excuse the actions of Uldren, it does open up for the raid, and it opens up to the endgame of the Dreaming City. And while the transition from spaghetti western about revenge to space Lord of the Rings could have been smoother, we finish one story and then we move to the next one. Shadowkeep, like Forsaken, starts with an A and a B plot. The A plot is the Hive are on the moon and they're up to no good, and the B plot is, why is this happening? Instead of finishing the A plot and discovering the B plot, the game cuts to the chase and throws the A plot right out the fucking window, and goes straight to the end game and straight to the B plot. It's almost in a sprint to get there. It's almost like they couldn't be bothered to think of an actual story, so they just go, you know what, fuck it, most people just want to play the end game anyways, so let's beeline it right there. Now, I'm just spitballing here, but what if we had to fight our way through the Scarlet Keep, and at the end of the game, we have the revelation of the pyramid ship? I mean, no, think about it. We have to fight our way through the tower to get to Crota's daughter, Hashladun. And only after killing her are we allowed to find out what's the cause of all the nightmares, and what the Scarlet Keep is built on. You could have a Dark Souls-like story where we go back to the moon, and on the surface of the moon you can discover nightmares. And the nightmares are ambient public events, or lost sectors. And then you have the Scarlet Keep, a multi-level dreadnought-like play space where you go in and you kill all these different Hive generals with their own environments, their own unique mechanics. Maybe one is a master hunter, and he uses a sniper, which is something that we haven't seen from a huge Ascendant Hive. And this Hive is hunting you through both his environment and the Ascendant plane. And it's this game of cat and mouse. Or maybe we fight a witch whose job is to breed and take care of worm larvae. Maybe we fight a huge Hive worm again. And the goal of this would be to get to Crota's daughter, Hashladun, in a way that's kind of reminiscent of a raid. Then once you get to Hashladun and you kill her, you discover what the Hive have been hiding, and boom! You make your way to the pyramid ship, you have your visions, you commune with the darkness, you fight powerful nightmares. It would play out exactly like the last level did, and then boom! You have the Black Garden. You find out that the ship is communicating with something in the Black Garden, and that the Vex are coming, and then, dun dun dun! Season of the Undying. And that was just something I spitballed off the top of my head. I find it hard to believe that dozens, if not hundreds of people couldn't come up with something better. Yet, here we are. Shadowkeep's story doesn't do or say anything. Yes, there's the revelation of the darkness, and an ending ripped from either the 2007 movie Contact.
You're an interesting species. An interesting mix. You're capable of such beautiful dreams. And such horrible nightmares. You feel so lost. So cut off. So alone.
Or the Warhammer 40k book Eye of Terra, chapters 6 through 9. For my Warhammer fans, that's where Lorgar does his pilgrimage and his vision quest, where the Chaos Gods are trying to convince him that they're not really evil, that the Emperor is really the evil one, and that all the Chaos Gods want is the natural order of things.
have heard your cries for help, and soon we will answer. Who are you? Don't you recognize us? We are not your friend. We are not your enemy. We are your salvation.
When did this book come out again? March 2016. Well, I mean, you know, it's a trope, right? Draw your own conclusions. As Shadowkeep isn't as, what would the right word be? Offensive, narratively offensive, distasteful, terrible? Terrible, we'll go with terrible. As Curse of Osiris or Warmind, which are laden with retcons, poor characterization, bad dialogue, and just bad writing, Shadowkeep only accomplishes this by having very little story to tell, and padding out its runtime 3 to 4 hours with nothing but busy work. But hey, those are just my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comments below, and like always, stay frosty.